Hey Reddit, this is my first time posting here, and honestly, I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd need advice on something like this. I feel like my entire life just flipped upside down in a matter of hours, and I don't even know where to start. But I guess I'll just start at the beginning. My wife, Laura, 32F, and I, 35M, have been married for 8 years. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, hit it off instantly, and have been inseparable ever since. Laura is everything I could have ever wanted in a partner: funny, ambitious, loving, and incredibly smart. Our marriage hasn't been perfect, whose is, but I always thought we were solid. Or at least, I did until yesterday. Laura is very active on social media. She's always been the type to post pictures of our vacations, share funny stories, and update her followers about her life. It's just part of who she is, and I never really thought twice about it. She's also been dabbling in live streaming over the past year. She started doing it as a way to connect with her followers more directly, and while it's not a full-time thing, she enjoys it. She typically streams things like cooking, book recommendations, or just chatting with her audience. Yesterday was supposed to be like any other day. I was working from home, buried in emails and Zoom meetings, while Laura told me she had errands to run. She kissed me goodbye, said she'd be back in a few hours, and left the house with her usual cheerful energy. I didn't think anything of it. A couple of hours later, I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Instagram. Laura had gone live. This wasn't unusual. She often live streamed during her errands, chatting with her followers while walking through the farmer's market or shopping for groceries. I didn't always tune in, but since I was waiting for my turn to speak in the meeting, I decided to check in. That's when everything started to fall apart. When I opened the live stream, the first thing I saw was Laura sitting at an outdoor cafe. She was dressed up, more than she usually would be for errands, and her tone was light and cheerful as she greeted her audience. "Hey, guys. I thought I'd take you along with me on this beautiful day. Just grabbing a coffee before running a few errands," she said, smiling at the camera. I was about to close the app when something caught my eye. The angle of her phone shifted slightly, and for a brief second, I saw someone sitting across from her. It was a man. He was wearing sunglasses and a neatly pressed button-down shirt, and while his face wasn't fully visible, I could tell he wasn't just some random stranger. Laura quickly adjusted the camera so the man was out of view, but the moment stuck in my mind. Okay, maybe it's just a friend or coworker, I told myself. But the way she was acting, her voice, her body language, felt off. She seemed nervous, almost jittery, in a way that wasn't like her usual self. Curious, I decided to keep watching. She kept the camera on herself, chatting about mundane things like her plans for the weekend and how much she loved the sunny weather. But every so often, she'd glance off camera, her smile faltering for just a second before she caught herself. It was subtle, but I noticed. Then, something happened that made my heart drop. About 10 minutes into the stream, the man's voice broke through the background noise. He said something like, "So, are we still good for next weekend?" It was quiet, almost casual, but it was enough for her audience, and for me, to hear. Laura's eyes widened slightly, and she quickly laughed, waving it off like it was nothing. "Oh, just some errands I have to take care of," she said, addressing the audience as if the comment had been directed at them. At that moment, the chat lit up with questions. Viewers started asking, "Who's the guy? Are you on a date? What's going on?" Laura's face turned red, and she stammered something about it being a friend from work, before abruptly ending the live stream. I stared at my phone, completely stunned. My gut was telling me something was wrong, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself it was innocent, just a casual meetup with a coworker or friend, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. The way she'd acted, the man's tone, the way she'd ended the stream so abruptly. It didn't add up. When Laura came home later that afternoon, I tried to act normal. She was her usual bubbly self, chatting about her errands and asking me about my day. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I held back. I needed more information before I accused her of anything. That night, after she went to bed, I started doing some digging. I replayed the live stream from her profile, watching it over and over again, trying to catch any detail I might have missed. I even zoomed in on the brief shot of the man, trying to figure out who he was. But his face wasn't clear enough to identify, and Laura hadn't mentioned anything in the stream that gave me a solid lead. I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I overreacting? Was this all just a misunderstanding? Or was there something deeper going on? Reddit, I don't know what to do. Should I confront her about what I saw? Should I wait and see if anything else happens? Part of me feels like I'm being paranoid, but another part of me can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than she's letting on. After that bizarre live stream, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of it in my head. The way she laughed nervously, the way she abruptly ended the stream when the man's voice slipped into the audio, it all felt wrong. I kept asking myself the same question. Am I overthinking this? Or is there something here I need to dig into? By morning, my curiosity had won out. I decided I couldn't confront Laura just yet, not without more concrete information. If I accused her and it turned out to be nothing, I damaged the trust between us for no reason. But if there was something going on, I needed proof before I could take the next step. The first thing I did was check Laura's social media. Her live stream had been deleted, no surprise there, but I already had a recording of it saved to my phone from the night before. I scrolled through her Instagram posts, her tagged photos, and even her follower list, looking for any trace of the mystery man. I knew it was a long shot, but I figured if he was a friend or coworker, there might be some connection online. Nothing. There wasn't a single photo, comment, or mention of anyone who looked even remotely like the man in the cafe. That in itself struck me as odd. Laura was always tagging people in her posts, whether it was coworkers, friends, or even random acquaintances she bumped into at events. If this guy was someone innocent, why wasn't there any record of him? Next, I checked her phone. Now, before anyone jumps on me for invading her privacy, let me just say this. I'm not proud of it. But after that live stream, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and I needed answers. Laura and I have always been pretty open with each other about our phones. We both know each other's passcodes, and it's not like we've ever hidden anything before. But still, I felt guilty as hell when I picked up her phone and started scrolling through her messages while she was in the shower. At first, everything seemed normal. Most of her texts were from her mom, her sister, and a group chat with some friends from college. I even saw a couple of messages from her coworkers, but nothing stood out as suspicious. Just when I was about to give up, I noticed something strange. There was a thread with no name, just a phone number. The messages were sparse, only a few over the past couple of weeks, but they were odd. Unknown number. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Same place? Laura. Yep, same place. Can't wait, smiling face with smiling eyes. That was from the day before the live stream. My heart sank as I read the exchange over and over again. Same place? Was that the cafe? And why didn't this number have a name saved in her contacts? I scrolled further up, but the thread didn't go back very far. Either they hadn't been texting for long, or Laura had deleted the earlier messages. Either way, it didn't look good. I decided to take things a step further. Using the unknown number, I ran a reverse phone lookup online. Most of the free sites didn't give me much, just that the number was registered in the area, but after trying a few different tools, I finally hit gold. The number belonged to someone named James Carter. I didn't recognize the name, but my stomach churned at the realization that this wasn't just some random spammer or telemarketer. This was a real person, someone who'd arranged to meet my wife at a specific location. The name James Carter stuck in my mind all day. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't think about anything else except figuring out who he was and how he fit into Laura's life. That evening, after Laura had gone to bed, I started digging again. I searched James Carter on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, anywhere I thought he might have a profile. It didn't take long to find him. His Facebook page was mostly private, but his profile picture was the same man I'd seen in the live stream. Same sharp jawline, same sunglasses, same smug expression that made my blood boil. His bio said he worked as a financial advisor and listed his location as the same city Laura and I live in. I scrolled through his friends list, but Laura wasn't on it. That made sense if she was trying to keep their connection a secret. Still, the fact that they weren't connected publicly didn't make me feel any better. I clicked on his LinkedIn next, and that's when I found the missing piece of the puzzle. James Carter worked at the same company as Laura. He wasn't in her department, but he was listed as a regional manager for the same organization. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The friend from work, excuse, the way she'd acted on the live stream, the text about meeting at the cafe, it all lined up. At this point, I felt like I was going insane. Part of me still wanted to believe this was innocent, that maybe James really was just a coworker, and I was reading too much into it. But the secrecy, the deleted live stream, the unnamed number in her phone, it didn't sit right with me. I decided to keep watching. If Laura and James were meeting up regularly, they were bound to slip up eventually. Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on Laura's behavior. I didn't tell her what I'd found, didn't ask her about James, didn't let on that I suspected anything. If there was something going on, I wanted to catch her in the act. Meanwhile, I started documenting everything: the live stream, the texts, the reverse phone lookup, even the photos I'd taken of James' social media profiles. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it all yet, but I knew I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. Reddit. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I want to confront her so badly, but I also want to be absolutely sure before I accuse her of something so serious. Am I doing the right thing by waiting and gathering more evidence? Or should I just rip the Band-Aid off and ask her directly? I don't know where this is going, but I'm afraid of what I might find. The days that followed were some of the longest and most agonizing of my life. Every time Laura picked up her phone or mentioned work, my heart would race, wondering if she was talking to James. I didn't know if I was being paranoid or if my instincts were right, but either way, I couldn't let it go. I decided to track her movements. Again, I'm not proud of this, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you were capable of. Laura and I share our locations with each other on our phones. It's something we set up years ago for safety reasons, and it's never been an issue. So one afternoon when she said she was heading to the store, I checked her location out of curiosity. She wasn't at the store. Instead, she was at the same cafe where she'd live-streamed days earlier. My stomach churned as I watched her little blue dot sit there for nearly an hour before finally moving. When she got home, I casually asked how her shopping trip went. She smiled and said, "It was fine, just picked up a few things we needed." She was lying. At that moment, I felt the crack in our marriage grow even wider. I didn't confront her right away because I wanted to know what she was really up to. If she was lying about where she was, what else was she lying about? The next morning, I decided to step up my investigation. I installed a GPS tracker app on her car, a decision that made me feel dirty, but I needed answers. I told myself it was the only way to get the truth without tipping her off. Later that week, she told me she had to work late. "It's just a meeting with my team," she said. "I probably won't be back until 8 or 9. I nodded, pretending to accept her excuse, but as soon as she left, I opened the tracker app. She wasn't going to the office. Her car was headed downtown, straight to the same cafe. My heart sank. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. Something was happening there, something she didn't want me to know about. I decided to see for myself. I waited about 30 minutes before leaving the house, giving her enough time to settle in wherever she was going. When I arrived at the cafe, I parked a block away and walked toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like I was on the verge of discovering something that would change my life forever. When I reached the cafe, I peered through the large windows, and there they were, Laura and James, sitting at a small corner table. She was laughing at something he said, her hand lightly brushing his arm. They looked comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times before. I wanted to burst in and confront them right then and there, but I stopped myself. If I made a scene, they'd just deny everything or try to spin it in their favor. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture of them through the window. It wasn't the clearest shot, but it was enough to show they were together. I stayed outside for another 20 minutes, watching as they talked and laughed like they didn't have a care in the world. At one point, James leaned in closer, and Laura didn't pull away. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a friendly chat between coworkers. There was something more going on here. Eventually, they both got up to leave. I quickly ducked behind a parked car, watching as they walked out together. James placed his hand on the small of her back as they walked toward the parking lot. I snapped another photo, my hands trembling with anger and heartbreak. When I got home that night, Laura walked in with a smile on her face, acting like everything was normal. "Sorry I'm so late," she said. The meeting ran long. I nodded, fighting back the urge to confront her. I needed time to process what I'd seen, to figure out my next move. The next morning, I woke up with a mix of dread and determination. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine while my marriage crumbled around me. It was time to confront Laura and demand the truth. I waited until she came downstairs for breakfast, then slid my phone across the table. The photos of her and James were pulled up on the screen. She froze, her eyes widening as she stared at the images. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That's what I'd like to know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who is James, and why have you been lying to me about where you've been?" Her face turned pale, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she let out a shaky breath and said, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Really? Because it looks like you've been sneaking around with another man. Care to explain?" She looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. James is just a coworker. We've been working on a project together, and sometimes we meet outside of work to talk about it. That's all it is. Don't lie to me, Laura, I snapped. I've seen the way you look at him. I heard what he said on your live stream. This isn't just work, and you know it. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she finally looked at me. Okay, she whispered. You're right. It's not just work. My heart felt like it stopped. So, what is it then? She hesitated, then said, it's complicated. James and I got close over the past year, but it's never gone beyond talking. I swear. He's just someone I feel like I can talk to, someone who understands me in a way that I don't? I interrupted, my voice rising. She flinched, then nodded. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan for any of this, but I've been feeling so lonely, and instead of talking to me about it, you ran to another man, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? For us. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you how I was feeling. I stared at her, my mind racing with emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, they all swirled together, leaving me completely overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say, so I just got up and walked out of the room. After walking out of the room, I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest was heavy, my thoughts scattered, and my emotions running wild. I got in my car and just started driving, no destination in mind. I couldn't sit in that house, in that suffocating silence, with Laura's excuses and half-truths echoing in my head. Her words kept replaying over and over. I've been feeling so lonely. He's someone who understands me in a way that I couldn't believe this was happening. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of shared memories, plans, and love, and she was throwing it away for some guy at work? Whether or not it had gone beyond talking, as she claimed, didn't matter. The betrayal was real. Emotional or physical, it hurt the same. I parked in an empty lot and sat there for what felt like hours, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I leave her? Try to salvage our marriage? Could I even forgive her? Every possible outcome felt wrong, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the confrontation. I had to face her again, whether I was ready or not. By the time I got home, it was late in the afternoon. Laura was sitting on the couch, her face red and blotchy from crying. She looked up at me the moment I walked in, but I avoided her gaze and sat down in the armchair across the room. I didn't know if you'd come back, she said softly. I stared at her, the anger still bubbling just beneath the surface. Of course I came back, I said coldly. We have things to talk about. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll tell you everything, she said. I owe you the truth. I folded my arms, leaning back in the chair. Start with James, I said. How did this all begin? She took a deep breath, looking down at her hands. James joined the company about 2 years ago, she began. At first, we didn't talk much. He was in a different department, and we only saw each other during meetings or events. But last year, we started working on the same project, and that's when we got to know each other. And by got to know each other, you mean? I prompted. We started talking, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was innocent at first, just about work, nothing personal. But over time, we started sharing more. He'd ask about my day, and I'd ask about his. He's been through a lot, divorce, family issues, and we bonded over that. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. So you bonded. And then what? When did it cross the line? She hesitated, and I could see the conflict on her face. Finally, she said, it started a few months ago. I was having a bad day, work stress, everything at home feeling stagnant, and James noticed. He asked if I wanted to grab a coffee after work and talk. I said yes. That's when it started? I asked. She nodded. We talked for hours that night. It felt so easy, like I could say anything and he'd understand. After that, we started meeting up more often, at lunch, after work. We'd just talk, I swear. I never thought it would turn into anything more. But it did turn into more, didn't it? I said, my voice rising. Don't lie to me, Laura. Tears filled her eyes again, and she shook her head. We didn't sleep together, she said, her voice breaking. But I know I crossed a line. I shouldn't have met up with him. I shouldn't have let it get this far. I scoffed. So what was it then? Just emotional? Flirting? Do you have feelings for him? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I don't know, she admitted. I care about him, but I don't love him. Not the way I love you. I was stupid, and I let myself get caught up in something I shouldn't have. But it's over now. I ended it. I raised an eyebrow. You ended it? When? This week, she said. After the live stream. I realized how close I was to losing everything, and it terrified me. That's why I deleted the video. I didn't want anyone, especially you, to misunderstand what was going on. Misunderstand, I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You were sneaking around behind my back, lying about where you were, meeting up with another man. And you think this is some kind of misunderstanding? Are you serious right now? She burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry, she cried. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, you have to believe me. I never meant for this to happen. I love you and I want to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I sat there, watching her break down, and felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and pity. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her it was too late, that she'd already broken what we had. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, despite everything, wasn't ready to give up. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally, my voice shaking. I don't know if I can trust you again. But if you're serious about fixing this, you need to prove it. No more lies. No more secrets. You cut him out of your life completely. No texts, no calls, no meetings, nothing. She nodded vigorously, wiping her tears. I promise, she said. I'll block his number. I'll avoid him at work. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, I got up and walked toward the door. I need some time to think, I said, leaving her sitting there in silence. Driving aimlessly again, I realized I was at a crossroads. Laura claimed she wanted to fix things, but could I really believe her? Could I ever trust her again after this? Or was this the beginning of the end for us? After leaving the house, I parked my car in a quiet spot by the lake, a place I used to go to think when life felt overwhelming. I sat there for hours, staring at the water, running every possible scenario through my mind. My thoughts were a mess, flipping back and forth between anger, heartbreak, and a strange flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, Laura and I could come back from this. But how could I trust her again? The betrayal wasn't just about what she'd done. It was about how she'd gone behind my back, the lies she'd told, the way she'd risked everything we'd built together. Even if she hadn't slept with James, the emotional connection she had with him felt like just as big a betrayal, if not worse. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and stared at the photos I'd taken of her and James at the cafe. Part of me wanted to send them to her, to remind her that I knew the truth. But another part of me realized that I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Laura had already admitted to crossing a line. Now, it was up to me to decide what to do about it. When I got home, it was late, and Laura was still sitting on the couch. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she looked up at me with a mixture of hope and fear as I walked in. I could tell she wanted to say something, but I held up a hand to stop her. Before you say anything, I said, I need to make something clear. If we're going to move forward, if we even have a chance at fixing this, you need to take accountability. That means no excuses, no justifications. You don't get to blame your loneliness or our relationship problems for what you did. This was your choice. Do you understand that? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, she said quietly. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Good, I said. Then here's what's going to happen. First, you're cutting James out of your life completely. I don't care if he's a coworker. You'll avoid him at all costs, and if that means changing departments or even looking for a new job, then that's what you'll do. She nodded again, her hands trembling in her lap. I'll block him. I'll tell him it's over, and I'll keep my distance at work. I promise. Second, I continued, we're going to therapy, both individually and as a couple. You clearly have some things you need to work through, and so do I. If we're going to have any chance at rebuilding trust, we need professional help. Okay, she whispered. I'll find a therapist. I'll start as soon as possible. And third, I said, my voice firm, I need complete transparency from now on. That means no secrets, no locked phones, no deleting messages. If you want me to trust you again, you have to earn it. I'll do all of that, she said, her voice breaking. I'll do whatever you need me to do. I nodded, taking a deep breath. This isn't going to be easy, I said. And honestly, I don't even know if it's possible to fix this. But if you're serious about making things right, then this is your chance to prove it. The next day, Laura showed me her phone as she blocked James's number and deleted their text thread. She also sent him a message, short and to the point. James, I can't do this anymore. I've crossed a line, and it's not fair to my husband or myself. Please don't contact me again." I watched her type the message and hit send, her hands shaking the entire time. It felt like a small victory, but I knew this was just the beginning. Cutting James out of her life wasn't enough to erase the damage she'd done, but it was a step in the right direction. Later that day, Laura told me she'd spoken to her boss about transferring to a different department. She didn't go into detail about why, just said she wanted a change of pace, but she assured me that she wouldn't have to interact with James anymore. I appreciated the effort, but I couldn't shake the lingering doubt in my mind. Was she doing this because she truly wanted to fix our marriage, or because she was scared of losing me? A week later, we had our first therapy session. The counselor, Dr. Hayes, was calm and empathetic, creating a safe space for us to open up. I didn't hold back. I told Dr. Hayes everything about the live stream, the texts, the cafe meetings, and how I felt betrayed and humiliated by Laura's actions. Laura, to her credit, didn't try to defend herself. She admitted that she'd let things with James go too far and that she'd been selfish in how she handled her feelings of loneliness. She said she'd felt disconnected from me over the past year, but admitted that it was no excuse for seeking comfort in someone else. One thing Laura said during that session stuck with me. "I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until I saw your face after the live stream," she said. "I thought I was just filling a void, but I wasn't thinking about how much damage I was doing to our marriage." It was a painful truth to hear, but it also gave me some clarity. Laura wasn't happy, and instead of addressing that unhappiness with me, she'd sought solace in someone else. That didn't justify her actions, but it helped me understand why she'd done what she did. The weeks that followed were filled with ups and downs. Some days, I felt like we were making progress, like maybe we could find a way to rebuild what we'd lost. Other days, the anger and hurt would resurface, and I'd question whether it was worth the effort. Laura continued going to therapy on her own, and she started making a real effort to be present in our marriage. She'd leave me little notes, planned date nights, and even started asking me how I was feeling, a small gesture that meant more than I expected. But trust doesn't come back overnight. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt a pang of anxiety. Every time she mentioned work, I wondered if she was really telling me the truth. The paranoia was exhausting, and I didn't know how long I could live like this. It's been about a month since everything came to light, and while things aren't perfect, they're better. Laura has kept her word about cutting James out of her life, and she's been putting in the effort to show me that she's committed to fixing our marriage. As for me, I'm still figuring out how to forgive her. Some days, I feel like I'm ready to move forward. Other days, the pain of her betrayal feels as fresh as it did the day I found out. Reddit, I'm still not sure if we'll make it through this, but I'm trying. We're both trying. I guess that's all we can do for now. As time passed, Laura continued doing everything she promised. She blocked James, transferred departments at work, and even started sharing her location and phone activity with me voluntarily. It was a level of transparency I'd never asked for before, but now it felt necessary. Despite her efforts, I couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Trust is like a fragile vase. Once it's shattered, even if you glue it back together, the cracks are always visible. I tried to focus on the progress we were making, but every time she left the house, my mind went to dark places. Was she really at work? Was she really meeting her sister for lunch? Or was she back to lying to me? Our therapy sessions were helping, but they weren't a magic fix. I still had so many unanswered questions, and while I didn't want to dwell on the past, I couldn't help myself. One night, during a particularly tense conversation, I finally asked her the question that had been eating away at me. "Why didn't you come to me?" I said, my voice cracking. "When you were feeling lonely, when you were struggling, why did you go to him instead of me?" Laura hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know," she said. "I guess. I was scared. I didn't want you to see me as weak or needy. James was just easy. I didn't have to explain myself to him. He didn't expect anything from me." Her words stung, but they also gave me some clarity. She hadn't turned to James because she loved him or wanted to hurt me. She'd turned to him because she didn't know how to face her own emotions or share them with me. "I never wanted to shut you out," she said, reaching for my hand. "I know I did, and I'm so sorry. I don't want to lose you. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you if I have to." Her sincerity felt real, but the pain was still raw. I wanted to believe her, but I knew it would take time to rebuild trust, time to heal, time to figure out if we could truly move past this. A few weeks later, something happened that made me realize just how much things were starting to change. It was a Saturday morning, and Laura was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her laptop. I was making coffee, trying to push away the nagging thoughts that always seemed to creep in during quiet moments. Suddenly, Laura looked up at me and said, "I've been thinking, maybe we should take a trip. Just the two of us." "A trip?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah," she said. "We haven't gone anywhere together in so long. I think it could be good for us to get away, reconnect, and just be us again." Her suggestion caught me off guard. For months, our conversations had been tense and emotionally charged. The idea of going away together felt like a breath of fresh air, a chance to escape the heaviness of everything that had happened. "Where would we go?" I asked cautiously, not wanting to get my hopes up. "I don't know," she said with a small smile. "Somewhere quiet. Maybe the mountains? Or the beach? Somewhere we can just unplug and focus on each other." I nodded, my chest tightening with a mix of hope and fear. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." Planning the trip felt like a step in the right direction. It gave us something to look forward to, something to focus on besides the mess we were trying to clean up. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The trip turned out to be exactly what we needed. We rented a cabin in the mountains, far away from the noise and distractions of daily life. No phones, no work, no social media, just the two of us and the quiet stillness of nature. At first, it was a little awkward. We weren't used to being alone together without the weight of everything that had happened looming over us. But as the days went by, something shifted. We spent our mornings hiking through the woods, our afternoons sitting by the fire, and our evenings talking, really talking. For the first time in what felt like forever, we were honest with each other. Laura opened up about how she'd been feeling over the past year, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the pressure she'd put on herself to be perfect. And I opened up about my own fears and insecurities, things I'd been too proud to admit before. One night, as we sat under the stars, Laura took my hand and said, "Thank you for giving me another chance. I don't deserve it, but I promise I'll never take it for granted." Her words hit me hard. I realized that, despite everything, I still loved her. The pain of her betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it was starting to fade, replaced by a cautious hope that we could rebuild what we've lost. By the time we returned home, things felt lighter. We weren't completely healed, and I knew it would take time for the trust to fully return, but we were finally moving in the right direction. It's been 6 months since everything came to light, and while our marriage isn't perfect, it's stronger than it's been in years. Laura has stayed true to her word. She cut all ties with James, continued therapy, and has been fully transparent with me about everything. I've been working on my own issues, too, learning how to communicate better and be more present in our relationship. We still have our moments of doubt and insecurity, but we're facing them together now instead of running from them. Rebuilding trust is a slow process, but we're taking it one step at a time. Looking back, I'm still not sure how we got through it all. There were so many moments when I thought we were done, when the pain felt too overwhelming to bear. But somehow, we've made it this far, and I'm cautiously optimistic about what the future holds. To anyone reading this who's been through something similar, I won't lie, healing is hard, and forgiveness doesn't come easily. But if both people are willing to fight for it, sometimes love can survive even the darkest moments. After discovering my wife's emotional affair with a coworker, we've spent the past 6 months working on rebuilding trust and healing our marriage. It's been a long and painful journey, but we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.